Welcome to Recovery Comes Home Radio, your go-to podcast for all things related to addiction recovery. Whether you are an individual in recovery, a concerned loved one, or a dedicated professional, this podcast is tailored just for you. Here we are all about empowering you with the tools, insights, and inspiration you need to move forward. So grab your headphones, tune in, and let's embark on this transformative journey together. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Recovery Comes Home Radio. Today, we have our expert guest, Skip Sams, who's here to talk to us about all things reconciliation and reunification after addiction. Welcome, Skip. I'm very excited to have you on our show, and I can't wait to introduce you to our audience.
Well, thank you for having me. I was going to say thank you for being here, but thank you for what you do, and thank you for having me.
Thank you for showing up.
Yeah.
So, I understand you've been through quite a journey and finding your purpose and losing your purpose and getting really confused about in the beginning where you should go in this new journey of recovery. Can you tell us a little bit about your story and what impact recovery has had on you?
Thank you. There was a day in Chicago, where I'm from. It was a beautiful day. It was a fall, like November, and it was one of those afternoons where everything is orange because the fall sunset is just glowing. The leaves are glowing, and I look over at this one building and the light, the way it's flashing on it, it's just beautiful. And I'm looking at all this beauty around me, and my thought was, I'm going to close my recording studio and become a crystal meth dealer. And
Great idea.
That's what I did. I had that one thought. And that one thought I took seriously, and I changed everything. And I closed my recording studio and I started selling crystal meth full time. And I thought that was going to be a very romantic, seriously. I mean, I think I even thought, like, how cool is this going to be? I'm going to get to know people. I'm going to have money and there'll be people around and I'll be popular. And, I just thought that was a really good idea. Well, that was a good idea for never. And 3 years into it, I was so depressed. I had people in and out of my place. Along with crystal meth use comes a lot of sex. It's just somehow they go hand in hand, right?
It's not talked about enough, but you're absolutely right. Unfortunately, we don't have a good success rate in the recovery industry with crystal meth.
Yeah.
It's one of the hardest drugs to kick.
And that's one of the reasons for some people is because it's not automatically, but it often triggers a sex addiction. So,
yes.
And it's our innate need for sex, food, water, sex. I mean, humans, that's a need. So
basic.
Yeah. And it gets triggered. So that can be triggering. But 3 years into my dealing, I had so much sex. I used sex to get drugs. I used drugs to get more sex. And at the end of 3 years, I didn't want sex anymore. I wanted to be held. And I was so lonely. And I'd have people over at the house and they would be doing their thing in the room. And I would go out into my living room and curl up on my couch into fetal position and just feeling like the loneliest person in the world. And there was one morning that I came to and I thought, today is the day the pain ends. Just go do it. Just go jump in front of the L train. And I had been afraid to get on the L for a couple months because I kept visualizing that I was going to fall. Now, whether I did it on purpose or it was an accident, it didn't matter. I just kept visualizing it. And I know enough about life brings to us what we think about. So, but this morning I was just like, just go do it. And I had had suicidal thoughts before, but I had never made a plan. And this was like, make a plan, go do it. And there was something in that moment. I thought, you're almost 40 years old. I was 39. You're almost 40 years old. And the last 20 years, you have messed up every opportunity that life has given you. I would find a little bit of success and I would sabotage. I'd find a little bit of success, I would sabotage. I would find a little bit of success and I would sabotage and go down deeper. And I had an up and coming recording studio and music career and I sabotaged. And so I thought, you've messed up the last 20 years, just go do it. And there was something about that moment, another thought that said, wait a minute, if you've messed up the last 20 years and you're 40? What if you do something the next 20 years and something that will make up for the last 20 years where you self-sabotaged? What if you keep building up and work on your career, work on a business, work on your relationships? And wow, 60 is not that old anymore, Skip. And then I thought, wow, you could live another 20 years and you could be 80. And here's the thought. And I remember I'm a lyricist and it came to me as a lyric. Your life does not have to be over. It could be half over. And that thought just blew me away. And it was just like this revelation, right? And I got up and I went and got on the L train and went and got help. And that was the first.
So you never actually made it where you contemplated it, but you didn't follow through because you had this other thought.
I had the other thought. And with that thought, just like the thought that I had, leave music and become a dealer, and I acted on it, this same thing. I had that one thought and I acted on it. Today, I see that as my first experience with the God of my understanding, the gift of desperation, G-O-D. And that was definitely, that moment was a gift, how the math started just going off in my head. And so I went to treatment. First time I did it for me. I'd gone before, but I had left because I'd done it once before to save my relationship. And when I found out my partner wasn't going to come to family therapy, I was like, well, screw this. Checked myself out and moved into a crack house. Like literally, that's what I did. And
that's a great plan.
Yeah, of course. But this time I did it for me.
And that's so important.
It is. I mean, we have to do it for ourselves. That's the only time things really take hold, when it's something internalized, that it comes from within, negative or positive. When it comes from within, whatever the motivator is, that's when it's going to hold. That's when the transformation is going to take place.
And let me ask you, Skip, you're an award-winning composer and a multimedia producer. What was your experience with music along those times where you were using?
It's interesting to note that my first music experience was when I was 3 years old. I'm a preacher's kid, and I had a platform to sing. It was just inherited, right?
Oh, wow.
I just got to get up in front of the church, and they loved it. I got a lot of applause for it, but I also enjoyed that it was for God. I'm singing for Jesus, and that's what I was being taught. And I loved that. When I was about 10 years old and I started to figure out I was gay, and I would see people like Anita Bryant on the news every night trying to these witch hunts for gay teachers in schools, and that I started to hear the message, God loves you, but you're going to hell. So my teenage years were, the more I realized who I was authentically as a gay man, the more I fought back and used my religion to I tried in myself to pray the gay away. I would pray, God, please don't let me be gay. Please don't let me be gay. And I started preaching when I was 14. I started using singing and going to youth rallies, but then I started acting out sexually at the same time. So in my early teens, I started to learn to live a double life, and that was my training to be an addict.
To separate,
compartmentalized completely. And I still was using my singing. I still had the genuine, I want to sing for God, but there was the underlying thought also, if I do this well enough, if I do this good enough, God will save me and not let me be gay and take this away. And I went to Bible college for a year and a half. And my girlfriend, my sophomore year, she knew that I called it bisexual then. She knew. And at the end of the semester, she was like, Skip, you need to move to Los Angeles and take this opportunity to go to this music school and come out of the closet. And didn't do it because that's what she said. But I'm so grateful I had her in my life. And that's what I did. I moved to Los Angeles. I went to a music school. I've studied with, oh my God, composition teachers like Bill Conti, who wrote the Rocky theme, and Henry Mancini was like guest lecturers, and training with some of the best musicians in Los Angeles. That's how cool the school was. Unfortunately, it's not there anymore, Dick Rose School of Music. But there was something going on. Now I had music and I was learning it, and I was learning to do it in a way that I'd always dreamed of. But my purpose was different. That purpose was always for God. And now at this point in my life, it was like I had been told God loves you, but you're going to hell so
Right.
much that
Right.
now people hate me. I hate them. That's when I was 19 years old. That's the polar opposite. And I did that to create that boundary. So I didn't feel worthy
Right.
of, it's like, what am I doing this for? I disappointed God and I don't know what I'm doing this for anymore. And I felt so unworthy that I did not even practice. I started to drink and drug, smoke pot. And I remember a piano class one day, these kids that would come from all over the world to study with these Hollywood musicians.
Right.
There were in my piano class, I mean, these guys would just blow me away. And when it would get my turn to play, I would fake anxiety attacks because I hadn't practiced and I didn't feel good enough. It was just this self-sabotage thing again.
Right.
So I would find some success. I would get courage. I'd find some success and then I would sabotage. I'd find some success. I'd be in a show and then it would get great reviews. And afterward, I would just self-sabotage. I did a record. We call them records. That shows how old I am.
We did. Yes, I remember the vinyl.
But I did a national album and then I had a national artist and then I self-sabotaged. I closed the studio. So it was the same when I got sober. It was like, what am I doing this for? I tried to get music back, but crystal meth had ruined my voice. It had messed up my brain so much that I would go, because I hadn't played for those 3 years. I had not done anything. I could not play a chord on the piano. My brain just could not figure out chords. And I just thought, I've lost music. I've lost it. And that part of me is dead. And that died with addiction. But
that had to be devastating.
It was. I fell into a very deep depression when I was about 9 months sober. And that had a lot to do with it. A lot of it had to do with my mental illness of bipolar anyway. And which was, a side note real quick, it was a blessing I had that depression because they had always been trying to medicate symptoms of my addiction. 9 months into sobriety, when I was totally clean, that depression, that deep depression was able to, the doctors had something to really confirm a diagnosis and start to treat the real problems. That was a blessing, right? A blessing in disguise.
That's a great way to look at it.
But I just knew I hated myself. I would go to a concert. I remember going to a Beck concert and it was so cool. I had this puppet show going on and the cooler it got, the madder I got. I was so mad and I could just feel my body just resonate with this hot anger. And it was at myself. It was like, I will never be able to do that again. But there was also the part of me, it was like, hey, but you're alive and you made the decision you want to live. So if you have to live without music, then you're just going to have to accept that's gone. And that I needed a form of creativity. And so I started visual art. And I went to the community college and I started taking sketching classes. I was a sketcher before, and now I'm sketching. Now I'm sketching art. Some painting classes, stained glass classes, and I just threw myself into visual art. And because I had already had a bachelor's, I didn't need grades. But because it was a community college, we got graded. And I started out with D's all over the place. And some of those were gratuitous D's. But by the end of the year, my grades were going up to C's and then B's. And I think I got 1 or 2 A's. And people actually bought some of my art after 9 months. And this revelation came to me that if I can take something I've never learned before and throw myself into it and find passion in it and become successful with it, why can't I do that with music? And it was just light bulb went off and it was like, you can. You just have to start at the beginning. I couldn't pick up where I left off, but I could start from the beginning. And I started with the primary books that were like plain Mary Had a Little Lamb type stuff. And then I started working on my scales again. Thank God my neighbor was so tolerant because I played my scales for 4 or 5 hours a day, just getting the memory of my fingers back. I still wasn't able to sing, but I was getting my music back in other ways. And I realized that I knew I was getting well enough that I could apply for my master's degree in composition, which is when I went to the University of Miami.
Right.
Because I thought if I'm learning from school at the community college with art, let's do that with music. That was successful. Let's take it with that. And I started film scoring. I learned film scoring. And I actually got into a choir in Miami at the Unity on the Bay. I was able to start to get my voice back. And I started finding some success in this journey. But there was still, again, I'm not worthy of this.
Yeah, that's such a big theme that we see in our residents. This feeling of shame and guilt and unworthiness. Mm-hmm. It's so prevalent in our homes.
Yes. It's like relationships start to heal and we're grateful for it. But at the same time, I'm not worthy of this. I'm not worthy of this love. I've messed up everybody's life so much. And because we start to see through the step work, we start to see, and even without, thank God we have the step work to see where we have hope and have directions how to get out of that and grow as we go through it. Because without, we're just stuck with this, I really fucked up. But what I started to realize and through my step work is about making amends and that I wasn't worthy of this music. But things were going and I kept moving forward. And as my spiritual life started to grow, I started to become filled with the knowledge that I am worthy. Why? Because I exist. I am who I am and I'm made this way. And I've been through what I've gone through so that I can get through what I'm going to go through and I can help other people go through it as well. And I started making amends with my family. And there came a day, and really what helped me, and this was another big aha moment for me, was when I was making all this, I realized my family did not abandon me. I left them way before they left me. They had to. They needed their sanity.
And that happens in a lot of families.
Yeah. But it came for me to realize that, hey, I'm the one who left them.
Yeah.
And it was the same with music. Music never left me. Music did not leave me. I not only closed my recording studio, I abandoned it. I left all the equipment there. I abandoned my recording studio, tens of thousands of dollars equipment so that I could use full time. And when
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. And when I realized that, I started to understand that music's there waiting for me. Why? Because it's my friend. For me, music is the connection to my higher power. And my higher power is there. And my higher power speaks through me in the form of music and art. And that's one of the ways. And it's a way that I'm passionate about. And so, yes, I am worthy. And now I can use this to carry the message of recovery. For years, decades, when I left the church because of, I call it now the God of my misunderstanding.
Yes.
Right? And that left this big hole.
Sure.
Just left a big hole. And I tried to fill it with sex and drugs and alcohol and debt and all these different things. And it just left this hole. And now that I'm in recovery and I have the third step, that I can create a relationship with the God of my understanding, which allowed me to have that back. I realized that this hole is supposed to be there because that is the space of creativity. So I call it my holy space. And when I fill it with creativity, then I'm whole and I have my purpose. And so I've been able to take this process, and it was a process of 12, 13. I still work through that process, honestly. Sure. 17 years later. By the way, I don't know if I told you this, and I'd love to say it. My clean date is 4/20/2006.
Nice. I had down here 17 years.
Yeah. 4/20, though. I just think that's so
apropos.
Ironic.
You didn't do it on purpose.
No, but it is because I smoked a joint on the 19th.
Right. So there you go. The 4/20.
Yeah, I went to rehab the next day.
Well, now you're helping people in recovery share their light and hope through music.
Yes.
Right.
After I got my master's degree in music, from Miami, and I was using my music and my background also to record like guided meditations. And then I was being asked to go to retreats and different things and lead the guided meditations. And there I started to work with people one-on-one. And I found out that I'm working with people in a coaching manner. And I want to make sure I'm doing that correctly, because a lot of people call themselves a coach, and a coach does not tell people what to do.
Right. You're
A
absolutely
coach, it's again, finding that inside. A coach will help the person find those answers within themselves so that they're real, they're authentic, and they stick. And it's a real skill. And so I went back to the University of Miami and got my certification in professional coaching.
great.
And today I use that to help people. That process that took me like 15 years of being able to realize, hey, I'm worthy of this. I can work with people, and hopefully they don't have to spend 15 years
That's right.
figuring out that process. I can help guide and ask some questions that they can start to answer themselves. So I work with musicians and artists in recovery who are either reclaiming their music for the first time, or they've got their music back, but they're defining a new identity.
Absolutely.
As
You're
a
new
sober
person
musician.
now, right? Sure.
Yeah. So my purpose is different, right? Do I still want to be that rock star that I chased the dream of for 20 years? Can I let go of that? That's really hard. Or do I want to take that energy and still perform in a different manner? And how can I do that to be of service and spread the message of recovery and still be excited about that same dream?
Yeah, that's beautiful. Now, let me ask you about when you returned back from treatment and think of the first maybe couple of years of your recovery. What did it look like? Were you able to reconcile some of those relationships with the family?
Yeah.
Reintegrate into the community and such?
There was something about this time that I got sober. It was the first time I really ever been sober. It was the first time that I went to rehab. I even stayed an extra month. Thank God I was able to do that.
Wow, yeah.
Because I knew if I went back to Chicago right away, I would need money. How do you get money? You sell drugs. And I had tried a little bit before to get clean, and that all that was just too messed up. So when I got back, there was something about people could see my resolve. They could see my partner.
The resilience and the grit.
Yeah. There was just something about this time that there was this joy that I had, even along with that joy of being alive is what got me through the really difficult part of realizing that I sacrificed my music for addiction, because I hated myself for that, but I was so joyful to be alive. I was able to have some discussions with my family and with my parents. I'm going to say this real quick. Some things did not go so well because I thought I can work steps 1, 3, 9. I can admit that I'm powerless. I can admit that there is a power that, that of my understanding. Now I'm going to go and just make amends to all these people. Can't do that. It doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because we've said we're sorry so many times that it doesn't mean anything anymore.
That's a great point, because that's the same with all of our families. It doesn't want to hear it. They don't want to hear it anymore.
No, absolutely not. The best thing we can do is to go to our meetings, to do whatever it takes to find our community, to do the things that we need to do to make the small changes every day. Small changes every day. We made the big change of becoming abstinent.
Yes.
But we have to make small changes every day. And the steps help us make those small changes. So by the time we get to step 9, we've worked through our resentments. We've done our inventory where we've examined our defects and our assets. So then we work through letting go of those defects, be willing and just working through the pain of who am I if I'm not a freaking arrogant asshole? Because that's who I am, right? That's part of my identity. Who am I without that? And we have to work through that and learn that I don't have to be an arrogant asshole. I can be a confident person who encourages others.
Yes. And I think for me, music, I can't sing myself. I played flute and piccolo in both high school and college, but I can't sing. But when I put music on, I feel as if I'm expressing those same sentiments. I really get into the lyrics and the beat.
Yeah.
And it has the ability to transport you to another world and heal you on a level
Absolutely.
that nothing else can.
Yeah. And that's a form, even listening to music is a form of creativity. And we're creating new lives. Anybody who tells me they're not creative, I point that out. You are creating your life. You are creating your circumstances. You are creating your income when you decide what job you're going to get. You're creating your surroundings. You're creating your social. You are creating. And so everybody's creative.
Right.
And having a creative outlet for me, that also taking the still life drawing class, even though I sucked at it, I learned the art of meditation through that. Because when you're drawing a still life, you are focusing on every little aspect of the pinpoint of light and lines and the absence of lines.
And the contrast between the negative.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So my brain is not on, my relationships or using or not using, or my brain is focused. And I learned to connect that way. So that was very helpful. And by the time we use these tools and we get through the steps, by the time we get to step 9, people will see he's already made the change. So when we come to them and make the amends, that's why they're willing to forgive. Right. Because this time when we say we're sorry, we've already proven, we've already have the tools. Everything is already in place. And sometimes they can't forgive.
Right.
But we know we have done the work and we are doing it to go through the process of being able to forgive ourselves.
Yeah, that's so fundamental, because so many people we see in our recovery houses or in our Recovery Comes Home program, they just don't have any self-esteem. And they have that old way of thinking that this just is how I am, like Popeye, I am what I am. But we've proven now that neuroscience says you can grow new synapses, you can grow new neurons. You can fire that stuff again that used to fire. And that's why I love your story so much, Skip, is because we don't know very many people. Being in this industry for 15 years and having at our height 60 souls, 10 houses of 60 people, we know probably 4 that have recovered from meth.
Yeah.
It's really tough because of the damage that it does, but your story showcases the hope and inspiration that Recovery Comes Home Radio is all about, that you can't give up on your dreams. I mean, you can, but you are going to suffer the consequences.
You can change your dreams.
Yes.
You can change your dreams. We change, and we can make an amends with our dreams. I call it making amends with my muse.
Yeah.
I've made an amends with my muse when I realized that doing my part, I left, music didn't leave me, and making amends with and reconciling with myself that I'm not the addict anymore. I can create new stories. I can write a new song, figuratively and real. I can have a new dream, right? And be excited about it. The only reason I am able to say that I have 17 years is because the basis of my God is the circle of group of drug addicts that I sit with every week.
You know, it's funny because there was a friend of mine who was fundamentalist, and I'm not in the program, but my husband is for 23 years and I've been sick my whole life. So I know I've recovered 1,000 times. And like I said before, they're very similar. They go along very similar lines. To recover from anything is how you recover from everything. But it's just, I think when people come into the program, they hear a life beyond your wildest dreams, but they don't know what the dream is anymore.
That's right.
They're like, what are you talking about? All I know is this ducking and running and hiding. They don't know how to dream. And so this is a great way for them to start to dream again by being creative. So you did go back and you got that certificate for coaching. And so how are you using that now?
Today, I get to work with musicians and artists in recovery who are either reclaiming their creativity or they are redefining their musical identity, creating new dreams. Who am I now that I'm a sober musician? I'm a sober artist. That's so frightening, isn't it? When you first step out that vulnerable. there's so many different aspects to it as well, especially I understand for musicians, where do we play out? Bars. What's going on in the recording studios? People are smoking pot. Where do we network? What about any of the professional networking events? It's so much centered, and drugs and alcohol are okay and accepted and encouraged in some places. And thank God today, the view, there's been enough of the superstars that are talk so openly about their recovery, and people understand a little more about recovery today than they did 20 years ago. So when I tell people I'm in recovery, they're like, good for you, man. People don't like, hey, Skip, take another toke. Oh, just have one. There's some change, but I still have to work through that stuff. How am I going to create if I don't smoke a joint first?
That's so prevalent among our residents. They feel like, especially if they've got bipolar is a high one in this, and other mental issues that are co-occurring.
Yeah.
It's so prevalent because they think that their solution, which was either booze or drugs or shopping or sex or gambling or pornography or whatever it is, and it's not that.
It's interesting. I'm glad you brought that up, because there are some of us who, how am I going to create without the drugs? There are some of us like me that, how am I going to create because I gave up the drugs to not create, right? And how am I going to get that back? And then there's some of us who are like, okay, I'm not taking the street drugs anymore, and I accept that, but they're trying to prescribe me to take this other drug. So, but that's going to mess up my creativity.
That's right.
And from my experience, it did not mess up my creativity, taking medication that's prescribed and as prescribed. But I find there's a little bit of humor in, hey, I'm going to trust the street drugs to make me creative. But no, don't give me the ones that are given to me by professionals and scientifically proven that are going to help me, because they're going to mess me up.
We laugh about that all the time because people will do like anything. They're garbage heads. They'll do anything. And then they get into recovery and they're like, oh, I'm on a gluten-free diet and I'm using Kangen water. And we're like, what? You just totally abused your body for 20 years. And now you're worried about the ingredients in a little stick,
And yes, and you've been picking up baggies off the street and not knowing what it is and smoking it or snorting it. And now a doctor or doctors are saying, hey, you have this mental condition, whether it's permanent or temporary. Here's some medications that are going to help you.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I can't do that.
Oh, I can't take that.
No. So that's something that people have to work through when they get home.
Yeah. And there's some fellowships that are like really strict about this, no matter what club. I had a guy calling me who was paranoid schizophrenic, and he would call me about once every month and just ask me if he was still clean because he's taking his psych meds.
Yeah. And that's, I will say, one of the programs I go to, the literature says we are not doctors.
That's right.
We are not doctors.
That's right.
And medical treatment was not sufficient. Psychiatry was not sufficient. It wasn't bad. It wasn't wrong. It just wasn't sufficient. Once we get clean, it can be sufficient. I call it my sobriety cocktail, meditation and medication. I have to have both, because there are times that one may be faulting a little bit, but the other boost keeps the glass full. The glass is never half empty anymore. It's
right. And we've got a really good friend that wants to write a book called Take Your Damn Meds. He's bipolar and on the spectrum and really struggles. But he has a tendency, like a lot of people that we know, both in recovery and out, you start taking your medication, you feel better, and you don't want to take the medication anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So we worked through all of those things, but I heard that you have a gift for our audience today.
I do. Thank you for reminding me of that. So I do my coaching programs. I have group coaching programs, and I coach people individually. Some of my group coaching programs, one of my favorite is called the Creative Purpose Project. And it is working through, we decide a project. And during the course of the 12 weeks, we start working towards the completion of that project. Now, the end product is not the goal. The goal is understanding and really looking at what is our process, what is our new process of creating when we're sober, and what is the purpose that comes up? And then take all this information and continue on to be able to create from a new perspective and with a new purpose. So that's one of my favorite programs. It's just, I love seeing the aha moments, and it's great with a group because people are there to encourage one another, and it helps us to be vulnerable, to show, because it's in a group where they become close, that it's okay for me to share a bad song with you this week because I trust you. So that's one of my favorite programs. But for your listeners and anyone at home, if they contact me, skipsams.com, and click on coaching, get a hold of me that way, skipsams.com. I am offering a 1-hour exploratory session of redefining our creative purpose.
That's wonderful. I can already see, we have one young man in right now that he used to play the guitar, and he went to go work at a restaurant rather than go work at Guitar City. I think because he might be scared of, what if it's not there?
Yes.
What happens if I go and I can't play?
Well, he needs to be in my next program that's starting in 3 weeks.
Good. I'm actually going to talk to him about it.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't express himself verbally as well as I think he could express himself through his music.
That's right. And that's what the importance of this is. My program, I have people who are hobbyists and people who are professionals trying to get their profession back, or that are got their profession back, but looking for that purpose, that it feels empty. So when I work with people, it doesn't matter what their status is. What matters to me is how connected are you to your creative process? How connected do you want to be? Because this is going to help you heal. This is going to help you carry the message. You're going to grow as you go through this. And I mean, you can't not do it.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I have to have this creative outlet. I have to have it.
Or we'll go crazy.
Yeah. And I've created a safe place for people to do that.
That's so wonderful. We are almost out of time, but I did want to give you an opportunity to maybe give us something that you talked about, wanting to save people those 15 years that you went through. What advice would you give to yourself right after getting back from treatment and getting back into the real world and reintegrating into society? What would you tell somebody that's in that same position?
You are worthy. You are worthy. And if you can't believe it, just know that somebody else believes it for you, and somebody else knows it. And based upon that knowing you are worthy, allow yourself to go through the process of making the little changes every day. Allow yourself the little changes. Don't try to do it all at once.
We didn't become addicted in a day.
That's right. So we don't recover in one day. We can stop using in one day.
Yes.
We stop using in 1 second, but we don't instantly recover in that second. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah. And that's why I'm so excited about the program that you have and the things that we're offering at Recovery Comes Home Radio and with our Recovery Comes Home virtual program. It really is, during this time, addiction, overdose, and alcoholism is up 40% since 2019. And it used to be primary addiction with some secondary mental illness, not a lot. Now it's almost all primary mental health, secondary addiction.
Yeah.
So this has been really a wonderful interview. I can't wait to have you back on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been wonderful. And I will see you on the next show, and we'll get all of your... Don't worry if you didn't have a chance to write down all of Skip's links. They will all be in the show notes, and you can get in contact with him and get that. I would encourage all of you to get that 1-hour session with him and really see where you guys can take this. I'm excited to see how that turns out.
One more thing. If they go on Facebook and look for Sober Musicians and Artists in a group, I have a private group for Sober Musicians and Artists. Look it up. You'll find it. And that's a great space. Even if you're not coaching with me, that's a great community there.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll catch you on the next episode of Recovery Comes Home Radio. Thanks for tuning in, and everybody stay safe out there. Thank you for tuning in to Recovery Comes Home Radio. We hope that today's episode has provided you with valuable information and insights on the recovery process. Remember, you are not alone on this journey. Keep seeking support, practicing self-care, and moving forward one step at a time. Until next time, stay strong, stay resilient, and stay humble. Hope lives here.